Alright, so here we go. I'm voting that I'm gonna do this the hard way because I think it's a key, a big component to what we're trying to make here. But we're gonna need to do some stuff to make this happen. So the first one I think I'm gonna do is I'm gonna align the magazine in our 3D model with the z-axis or the up and down axis, whatever software we're in. It's gonna be named something different. But here's our magazine, right? And right now, if we look at it from the side, the line of the magazine is not straight. It's at an angle. And if we're going to be coding this for rounds sliding up and down in here, it's not going to be terribly difficult because we're just going to have to translate them along a function line, 2 down, 1 over kind of thing. But we'd rather not have to do that, right? It'd be so much simpler if it was just straight. So what I think I'm going to do is we're going to take the magazine here, and we're going to just rotate it. So it is in a straight line. I think that's straight, but here, let's look wireframe. And then let's compare here. So if you can see this line right here, which is 2/10 of a blender unit, or whatever that division actually is. Well, it's smaller than that, but so it's probably 2/100ths or thousandths of a blender unit, but there you go. Right. And then let's just kind of look at that line and make sure we seem pretty straight along it. And I think that's plenty straight for what I'm trying to do. You can see that the edge of the magazine is right along that line going down, and it's still right along that line. You could maybe tweak it ever so slightly, but that's good enough for me. So, cool. And then that has rotated everything else to be in line with it as well. So, that looks good. I'm going to go ahead and apply all transforms. Okay. So now, let's save that and export it. Now, I should have paid attention to the degree of rotation there, but we'll figure it out. Right, because if we kind of redo that and just get it roughly correct, right? Yeah, I think that's about right. So what is it telling me that rotation is? It's 7.3 degrees, 7.28. So, awesome. So we can close this out. We shouldn't need to, we already have saved that, so I don't want to save my undoing, redoing. But let's just note that down somewhere. 7.28 degrees. Cool. So, if we go into the magazine folder here, and we open this guy up, it should now be rotated. Now, it isn't. So what are we doing wrong here? We could remove this and just re-import it, just like this. That didn't change it. I wonder if I didn't export it. Hang on, let's just make sure I exported it. Because it should actually automatically update. So let's not save our changes here. Don't save. And let's open this back up. Cool. There it's vertical, like we want it to be. Let's go export like this. Magazine. Geometry, apply modifiers. It should include everything. Okay. What if we close and reopen, just for sake of it? I don't want to change anything on the main menu, so that's fine. Yeah, I'm not sure. Let's see. So let's go back into the magazine here. There we go. We just had to close and reopen Godot, I guess. Have you tried turning it off and back on again? Alright. So that's our thing. And now, if we take the collision shape, and let's just change the rotation. Now, here I've got the rotation as 8 degrees, which that's close enough. Now, here's another point. I want this click area for the magazine, because that's what this is, really, is the magazine's click area. I want it to be centered down here on the bottom, because I'm going to want us to be able to click and drag I want to be able to click and drag the cartridges out of the top of the magazine, and that's not going to work if they're overlapping click boxes, right? Let's save this. But now I actually want... Oh, you know what? So hold on. Let me think about this. Where do we want to add the rotation back in? See what I mean? We could either just rotate it at the top world level, or even just rotate it at the gun level, and when you insert the magazine into the gun, it rotates it to properly be oriented. Otherwise, it's going to be straight like this. Let's see what this looks like if we do it like this. Right? So these magazines are now straight. See that? That looks fine. Honestly, that looks kind of cool. Like, it's not bad. We can keep it like that, and then we can play around with their rotation as we go. The other option, right, is we could rotate them. We could rotate them either at the top level world, or we could rotate them at the object level. I think all of our logic should still work if we do that. So let's make the logic work the easy way with everything straight up and down vertical, and then let's try rotating it and make sure everything still works as we'd expect. I think that's a fine idea. Now, here's a good point. All of this all of the trigger, hammer and trigger logic, we can mostly, I think, copy and paste from the revolver, because they're both double to single action pistols. The difference is the slide, working the slide will also manipulate the hammer, which I'm not too concerned about, because we can have those two things working, you know, independently. So I think it's fine. But that's going to be one of the next things we do. But first, I want to be putting bullets in this magazine. So that's going to be a challenge. So there's a couple ways I can picture doing this. We could have there be basically an animation of the new top round going into the magazine, and it kind of goes down and back, kind of like you normally would do if you were feeding around into the magazine. And then as the player gets the cartridge close enough to the magazine, it deletes that top world level cartridge and adds that cartridge to the magazine, which is fine. And then as you move the mouse, it's going to just call the drag motion function still on that cartridge. And that cartridge, instead of changing its position, it could just be emitting, hey, I'm being dragged, hey, I'm being dragged, which is actually already what it's doing. But its parent, in this case the magazine, can, instead of interpreting that and then causing it to translate, it can... See, there's going to be... We can add some complexity here, we can add some simplicity. There's going to be a question on how we want to do this, because our code for handling how things are dragged has abstractions for things being dragged on a 2D plane, like me dragging my camera like this, you know, versus a slider, a one-dimensional slider, you know, like, are there any easy one-dimensional sliders around here? I don't know. Like this, you know? And really, once you're inserting the magazine, the round in the magazine, I want it to behave like a one-dimensional slider. We could either keep it as a two-dimensional drag function, because here's the challenge. And we've solved this, actually, kind of, in our old code, but we were doing it in a very ugly way. Right. Right, so let's switch gears for just a second. If we go back to this guy, right? So right now this is a one-dimensional slider, right? But as soon as we remove it, say I can't translate it in the X direction, I can only translate it in the Y direction, right? But as soon as it leaves the gun, now it's being slid in the 2D dimension. We may be thinking about this too hard. Once we actually write the code, I think the solution will be apparent. We could either do one of two things. We could change the type of drag motion that's being applied to it by our universal singleton drag handler, or we can leave that be and then just change how the code handles those drag inputs and just have it ignore the X component. Either way, it's not really going to be a huge scary thing. There's a handoff action when the one-dimensional slider gets too far out of the gun. It's easiest to just show it, right? Because I have a working model right in front of my face. When the one-dimensional slider reaches the extreme of its travel, there's a handoff, and it literally deletes the magazine that's in the gun and spawns a magazine in the player's pocket heads-up display area, right? So it deletes it from the gun right here. Delete. And it spawns a new one in the player's HUD. And it makes it look very seamless that you just removed it from the gun, right? And same going in reverse. As soon as you drag it within a certain zone, it deletes the one from your HUD, and it creates one within the guns as a child of the gun, right? Which works pretty well. That looks pretty seamless. You know? There's a little bit of a jump. But if you're doing it with any kind of speed, it looks pretty smooth. It's pretty seamless. So that it looks very much like I just took it out of my pocket and then stuck it in the gun. Or took it out of the gun. Right? There's a little bit of a jump. But that's fine, right? I don't care about that in the slightest. You gotta. Alright. So, that's great. I kind of am scared to go read how we were handling that. Yeah, I don't know where our drag handling code was. And I kind of don't want to look at it. But so this is when you click the mag release, right? Here it is. So all of our dragging code was just in this one giant input event function. So we said if there's a mouse motion event and the mouse is down on the magazine, then we applied some very specific code to move it along that straight line. Right, and this was our clever literally moving it in a diagonal line, so up 2 over 1 kind of situation, just like that. So it mostly moved in the y direction, but it also had a small component of motion in the z direction. And we will have to do something like that, but we may have to do exactly that, and that's fine, to move something along a diagonal slide. There's nothing wrong with that. The only thing I dislike about this is the fact that this whole drag code is item specific. We have drag logic for each object manually hard coded, which just gets really a mess all in this one spot. Anyway, so I like the way we're doing it now better. It's a little bit more abstract, but so, and in that case, right, the gun was handling what to do with the dragging the magazine, whereas the way I'd prefer it to be is well, that's still actually not wrong. The item's direct parent should listen for the drag event on the item, and then it takes care of moving that event, that item, in whatever way it needs to move. I think that's still true. Sorry, I've been sent cat pictures that need to be acknowledged. It's a very cute cat. Alright. So, let's see. We've oriented the magazine up and down. Now, right, there's two ways we could do it. We could keep it... Here's the thing. When you insert the cartridge, it's going to press down and then slide down and back. Right? And I'm okay with not... We could do it a couple ways. We could go all out and make this super complicated and have there be a... We'd have there be a down and back motion that you need to complete with the mouse. And I kind of like that idea. And then it would switch between two different it would switch between two different sliders. It would be a double slider. There'd be a small downward slider, so you'd have to go, and then there'd be another slider. We'd have to push it back. And then we also need all of the cartridges that are already in the magazine, as you compress it, to go down with it. So, including the follower. Right. We can get in the weeds with this. We don't want to get too in the weeds with it. I kind of do, though. Let's just try it. Let's just try it and see what happens. So, first and foremost, let's just start coding it. Otherwise, it's not gonna... This is all hypothetical, and we're just spending time. So, this is our drag shape. Right. But we're actually gonna need another collision shape, because this is mapped with an input event, right? Well, this guy has input event. Right. I don't want a collision shape now. I want a regular area. So I think that's what we do want. So let's try adding an area. And I'm going to make this called cartridge entry area. I'm going to add a collision shape to it. My worry is that this collision shape will also apply to the magazine, but we'll be able to figure this out very quickly. So let's test it. So we need to give it a shape. We're just going to give it a cube. And that is way too big. So we're going to shrink it down. It's going to be pretty small. We're going to move it up here. So right over here is where you have to put a cartridge for the magazine to say, okay, that cartridge is coming into the magazine. I've got it wider because in your HUD, I actually stack the rounds, and depending on if we let you hold a bunch of rounds in a bunch of stacks, the magazine could be here in front of me at the player, vertically, right? Say this is my magazine, right? This is a shitty magazine to use it as an example because it's pretty hard to get the rounds in and out of it, but whatever. This is the magazine in front of me, right? The cartridge could be way in front of it, or way behind it, or right on it, depending on how I've stacked a bunch of these cartridges vertically, or not vertically, depthly, in the depth direction, right? This axis. So that's why there's some depth to that hitbox, right? That's the thought anyway. It may make sense, it may not make sense, we'll see. So now, and we want to change this guy's collision layer to be 3. Now, collision mask to be 3. I think we only care about the collision mask. Physics layer of this that this scans. The collision object scan. 2 different layers. Contact is detected if object A is in any of the layers that object B scans. Or object B is in any of the layer that object A scans. So collision, say what this is scanning. So this is only scanning for objects in the cartridge layer. That's it. Right? That makes sense to me. So here's the question that we want to test real quick. We've got these magazines. We can click them down in the body of the magazine, right? And they drag around. We can't click them up at the top, and that's by design. But I want to make sure I can't click them over here either, and I cannot, and that's good because I want to be able to send that click to the cartridge. If there's a cartridge right here in the magazine, I want to be able to click that cartridge out of here, not the magazine. So the first thing we need to do is if I drag a cartridge and it touches that point on the magazine, I want to cancel the drag motion in the top level HUD, and I want to transfer it to the magazine. So let's do that. And that, I think, is going to be fairly I think that's going to be fairly academic. It's not going to be too hard. At least I hope not. Right. In a previous effort, look at that. So you can see through the ejection port if you're looking up through the magazine. That's pretty cool. Or vice versa. You can see down through it. And there's now a breech face, you know, right here. There's a there you go. There's a back face to that breech. That didn't used to be there, and that was a problem because you could see the inside of the frame, and you're not supposed to be able to, or the slide. You could see like whatever back inside of this area, and in a real pistol, that's all solid, right? So, oops. There you go. That polygon right there is important. We need that in there, so that's good. That one right there. All right. I don't want to code this, but we need to. It's what needs to happen. So, here we go. We need there to be a handoff event if the cartridge falls in there. And we've already done that with the revolver already, right? So let's open the revolver up as an example. So if we go to our different gun over here, here's our revolver, the Model 19 Smith. Crack that bad boy open. Look at all those position markers. Excuse me. So this right here, pretending like it's Blender, trying to select that with a right click. This right here is the incoming cartridge detection area, right? Transfer cartridge area. And it is masking on layer 3, so that's correct. That's exactly what we want. And it has a body entered, and then it emits an on-transfer cartridge area body entered to the gun. Now, in our case, that's going to be to the magazine. Now, here's another question. Yeah, hang on. I feel like my washing machine's making a funny smell. I'll be right back. Maybe I'm tripping. So, that must have been loud. That was probably loud. Sorry. So, first of all, so body entered is what we're looking at here. So if we look at the magazine, cartridge entry area, body entered, we're going to say on cartridge entry area body entered. Sure. Is that what I have it actually named here? Yeah, body entered. Yeah, and that's fine. Okay. And then if we look at how we're handling this on the gun, body entered. Here it is. And we emit, and this is good because using signals is the way to do this. So we're going to call this literally the cartridge. Now, we don't have a crane in this situation. We do have a maximum number of rounds, right? At a certain point, you cannot put any more rounds in this magazine. Excuse me. Alright. So I think a reasonable way to represent this would be with an array. So let's make an array. So, if this I hadn't thought about this, but it's something that I thought about when I was programming the revolver. So I'm glad I'm using this as an example because we've already done the work before. If you were hypothetically to spin the gun around in the HUD and it were to touch one of the cartridges in your pocket, it could like vacuum it into the gun or into the magazine, right? Same with if you were just dragging the magazine around and you were touching all these cartridges, it could vacuum the cartridges into the magazine. That wouldn't be very fun. That's not what we're looking for. That could be like a weird speed run meta, like just go scooping up the bullets with the magazine. Anyway, we don't want it to program like that. So you need to be holding the cartridge and carrying it over to the magazine for it to put the cartridge into the magazine. Okay. That's going to ask for a cartridge. It's going to emit that signal. So, that's not going to do anything. Right. Now this is the reason this is called insert cartridge temporary is because we're not in the revolver case, we're not sliding those cartridges in with an actual slide animation or slide drag, which I want to eventually have it work like that. So that's why I called it temporary. Whatever. Righto. So, in this case, if we're given a cartridge, we want to spawn it with a particular rotation and position right above the follower, and then create a number of sliding apparatus around it. And that's going to include scaling the follower, shrinking, scaling the spring, moving the follower and any other cartridges that are behind it, etc. So this is going to get complicated, but not too complicated. Hopefully, we will try to do this in a not too crazy manner. So before we get too carried away, let's just get ourselves grounded in some actual code here. So instead of insert cartridge temporary on the cylinder, in this case, the magazine is the top level parent that's going to receive the cartridge. So we're just going to now this is, we don't have a cartridge situation, so we're going to do this. Kind of like this. We're not going to have any chambers. So we're going to say cartridges. Oh, do we have a dot count instead of a length for arrays? Now append puts it on the end of the array. This is an interesting question, how we want to... While all of our projectiles are exactly the same, this doesn't really matter, and if we ever add like special cartridges, it will become probably pretty academic to fix this with the right array operator, so we're just going to append it to the array for now. Then we don't do anything like this. That doesn't make sense. So, great. Now, add child. What's that going to look like? Alright, I've been summoned. We will resume at this point.